about 25 years old. I was living in Houston, Texas, and 8 hours from home. I had moved there because as a small town kid, that was my big moment of being far enough from home that I was just on my own. Really enjoyed it. It's a great season of life. I have some really great friends from that time. A lot of the people that a lot of my really cherished friends are from that season of life. Um, and I was working a lot. I was working a job. My life had its own momentum. And one afternoon, phone rings, and it's my mom on the other end of the phone. And she said, my dad had a heart attack. This is my dad, who is 10 feet tall and bulletproof, who nothing could ever stop him or destroy him or even derail him. And somehow he'd had a heart attack. Here's the funny thing, which tells you what you need. This is evidence of the kind of person that my dad was. My dad was actually, when he had the heart attack, he was driving to the coffee shop to see some of his friends. And he was on 15th Street there in Prague, Oklahoma. And he felt kind of weird. He wasn't sure what was happening. Pulled off the side of the road. And he was like, what do I need to do? Because at that point, there weren't cell phones. And he was far enough from home, and he was closer to the hospital than he was from home. So he just drove himself to the hospital. He gets there. They tell him he's having a heart attack. Next thing you know, he's on a helicopter, and they're flying him to Oklahoma City. And I get that phone call, and almost immediately I called the airline, and I booked a flight, and I headed back to Oklahoma. And honestly, I didn't know if he was going to be here when I landed. That's not a good feeling. And that fear of missing the moment, that fear of what was happening, kind of shifted something in me. And it highlighted this fear underneath all of it. I wasn't just afraid of missing his death. I was afraid of missing him. Well, he was still alive. Missing that time with my dad, missing that time with my mom, missing that time with family while they were still here. And it's funny because my dad went in, had quadruple bypass surgery, and 5 days later was out of the hospital. Because remember what I said? Evidently, my dad is impervious to everything. 5 days later, he's headed home. For anybody that's ever had family members or has seen quadruple bypass surgery, he went home with those weird stockings that made me laugh unendingly, because here's my dad, who was just the most manly of men, wearing white, what looked like pantyhose. I know that this is probably a dark way to look at all of it, but something about that made the whole experience a little bit funnier, a little bit less overwhelming, and we all kind of had a good time with all of it. 6 months later, I had taken a job back in Oklahoma. Not the only reason I came home, but one of them, because I didn't want to miss that. I didn't want to get that phone call 8 hours from home again, because here was still home. And that fear clarified something for me. And I think that the hospital clarified something for him. I wasn't the only one that was affected, obviously. But something shifted in him that day. My dad had always been a cartoon character, larger than life, and largely just impenetrable. Great dad, charismatic, gregarious, but contained. That's the best word that I can use for it. He was contained. He would be happy, he would laugh, but I never saw the other side of him. And after that heart attack, that wasn't the case anymore. His range was wider, and his emotions were closer to the surface. He cried. Just call it what it is. He cried in front of me more than once. This was a different version of my dad. And I want to be real clear when I say this. He didn't fall apart. He opened up. Those are very different things. This wasn't a collapse. This wasn't a mistake. This was an enrichment of who he was. That experience changed his relationship with his own feelings, and it didn't break him. It made him easier to be with. It changed him. My dad got there through a hospital bed, through a heart attack. I have another friend that he had a conversation with his dad that I thought was pretty hysterical. His dad was getting older and he was fine, not in a bad place, still fairly active, still in decent shape. But my friend sat down and had at one of their lunches that they would have on a regular basis. He sat down with his dad and he said, "Hey, Dad, just want to let you know that whenever you die, whatever I inherit, I'm going to buy a lake house with it." Okay. And he said, if I'm going to buy a lake house with the money, you know what I would rather? I would rather you buy the lake house now so I can spend time with you in it. And if that's my inheritance, then that's my inheritance. Because I'm going to do it later, but I'd rather experience it with you now. You know what his dad did? He went and bought a lake house, and he bought a boat, and he bought 2 Sea-Doos. And every other weekend, they'd go up to that lake, and they would all spend time together with he and his dad and their extended family. And they got to see each other and be around each other and got to enjoy each other. And that was a really rich window of time for them. And when my friend had that conversation with his dad, it wasn't a conversation about money because it didn't really have to do it didn't have anything to do with money. It didn't even have anything to do with the lake house. That was a man telling his dad, "I want more of you, not just the thing you leave behind." And his dad heard it. My dad and his dad both followed those feelings back to what they were actually about. That's what feelings are supposed to do. Feelings are supposed to point us to what it's actually about. But you know what I catch myself doing with feelings? What I caught myself doing with feelings at 25, and what I'm tempted to do with feelings, and sometimes do with feelings even at 54. Instead of looking at what they're pointing towards, it's often easier to just point yours at whoever's closest. Pointing our feelings at whoever's closest. And when we point our feelings at whoever's closest, guess what? Feelings become weapons. They become punishment for anybody that's around us instead of discovery for what's inside of us. Because the truth is, I've always had a lot of feelings. If you've listened very long at all to what we talk about on here, what I talk about on here, I've always had a lot of feelings. That's not going to be surprising for you. And a lot of times I felt like I had too many. I was too much. I felt too deeply, and it was more trouble than it was worth. For a long time, I thought the answer was to get it under control, to dial it back, to be less. I thought that was the solution to all my feelings, to dial it back, to fix it, to be less. And the fix wasn't to squash them. It was to find where they were actually pointing. I wish I'd figured that out earlier. Where are all these feelings actually pointing? Some of you have heard me talk about this. Steven Wilson Jr. is a guy that I keep coming back to and listening to a lot. He's a country artist. I'm not really even a country music guy, but it's funny how he's kind of burst onto the scene for me. And he's burst onto the scene because of frankly, the stuff that he talks about. He has this song that the lyric is, "Grief is only love that's got no place to go." That's a person that's not looking to squash anything. It's trying to figure out where it's actually pointing. A lot of times emotions are that way. We're not sure what they're pointing at. We're not sure where they're supposed to go. We're not sure. The thing that we have to remember is the feeling isn't wrong. The direction might be. Talked about this a couple of episodes, talking about my son walking out of his bedroom in the morning, and I could feel the temperature of the room change, that he would alter the morning with his bad attitude. It's the same thing. You got to know where it's pointed, because we kind of live in a world where feelings are weapons. Let me restate that, because I actually don't even agree with what I just said. We live in a world where feelings are being used as weapons, but they're not weapons. They're information. When we fire them at the people closest to us, we're wasting the signal. We're wasting that opportunity to learn. I hear this a lot. It's become a really common phrase where people talk about that I'm triggered, and then they use that as an excuse for a lot of bad behavior. I'm triggered is an excuse for bad behavior. It's a sign that you have something you need to deal with. It's a sign that I have something I need to deal with. And the arrow needs to be pointed back at me. not at somebody else. Because when feelings become punishment, when feelings become weapons, we are missing the point. I can remember a long time ago, I was working at this food truck festival that I ran for a lot of years, 50,000 people in the street. And my best friend brought out, he had built this giant, I don't really even know why, but he had built this giant, like, kind of Connect 4. And when I say giant, I mean like 8 feet tall, big. And he'd gone out of his way to bring this giant Connect 4 to the event. Wind was blowing around. Everything about it was a problem. Really great idea, but the situation was stressful, and I was feeling short because I was feeling all the pressure of everything that was going on there. I didn't listen. I did probably a million things wrong. He got mad because he'd gone out of his way to do something nice to help. And it became this vicious cycle that honestly, all these years later, I don't even remember all the details of it. And honestly, the details don't really matter. I just remember how bad it felt. That's all that's left at this point. I don't really remember the details, but I do remember that that's the worst disagreement that he and I have ever had. And the truth is, it wasn't about the Connect 4. I was feeling pressure, and Jared was standing closest. So he ended up being the target of all those feelings. The direction was wrong. He's still my best friend. And honestly, that's the only real disagreement that we've ever had in 20 years of being friends. And I still think about it. And I think we both still cringe a little bit about it because it's like, it felt gross. But I want to say this thing again that I've said several times, and I hope I've said it enough that it will start to soak in, that it will start to sink in, and hopefully it will start to sink in with me first. That we don't have a feelings problem, we have a direction problem. The question isn't whether you feel too much. It's not whether I feel too much. It's whether I've learned to follow the feeling back to its source instead of firing it at whoever's standing closest. Because feelings aren't weapons. They tell you where to look, not who to blame. And I'm just going to be honest at the very end of this. Actually, I'm going to rephrase that. My goal has been to be honest throughout all of this, but I'm just going to point the arrow back again. This is a constant struggle for me. It's a constant balancing act of figuring out how to navigate all of these feelings and all these thoughts and all these as somebody who's an empath. I've talked about this for years with friends. Hard moments, like those real emotional, like the moment with Jared where we had that disagreement. The best analogy that I can come up for it is this idea of, have you ever cooked with olive oil? And when you cook with olive oil and you get it on your hands, you can't just put your hands under the water and wash them off. There has to be some soap and there has to be some time. And that soap and that time is what gets it to wash off. It's not natural. It's not easy. It's not quick. It sticks for a while. And that's how I feel about my feelings a lot of times. That's how I feel about all the thoughts and ideas and tendencies that I have. And it's why at 54, I still look at those things and know that I have to manage them well and think about them and be conscious of them and not use them as weapons against the people around me. Not use them as manipulation, not use them as a battering ram, and not use them to hurt people. And I'm going to restate what I said just a little bit earlier. Feelings tell you where to look, not who to blame. Thanks for being here. Hope to see you next week. Thanks again.